They say there's a moment, almost imperceptible, when a human being awakens to something greater. Not through inspiration, through exhaustion. It's when they realize that the brilliance of motivational phrases doesn't warm the cold of their own failures. That's the point Ethan reached. He woke up every day believing that the next video, the next idea, the next promise would set him free. He watched lectures, read books, wrote down plans, and swore to himself, tomorrow, I'll really begin. But tomorrow always dawned the same, and each failed attempt fueled a silent feeling of emptiness within him, as if something inside his soul was dissolved. One night, sitting on the edge of his bed, his face buried in his hands, Ethan felt a different kind of unease. It wasn't sadness, clarity. For the first time, he realized he wasn't tired of failure, but of his own instability. Tired of being a man driven by the emotion of the moment. Then something shifted in the air. The room seemed to breathe with him, and in the silence a presence made itself felt, calm, firm, ancient. He didn't know if it was a dream or a memory, but he saw before him the silhouette of a warrior, a samurai. The man's gaze was like a blade. It didn't cut, but it revealed. Ethan didn't hear words. He understood what was said. The fire of motivation is beautiful, but sustains the warrior is not the fire, but the ember. That the presence demanded neither faith nor explanation. Observation. It was as if the samurai were Ethan's own conscience, long forgotten, waiting to be read. That night he made no promises, no plans. He simply sat in silence and watched his own breathing. He felt his heart beat, heavy, steady. For the first time, he wasn't seeking inspiration, seeking to be awake. Something inside him knew. The real battle began. As dawn broke, Ethan understood that it wasn't strength he lacked, but direction. And before the sun rose, the samurai's thought echoed in his mind. What is born of impulse dies in exhaustion, but what is born of discipline becomes eternal. The following morning, Ethan woke before the alarm. The memory of the samurai still pulsed in his mind like a distant echo. The air seemed denser, the silence sharper. He couldn't explain it, but he felt something watching him, not from the outside, but from. He left home aimlessly, walking through the nearly empty streets. The city was still asleep, enveloped in the distant sound of a barking dog, creaking of windows being opened. As he walked, he noticed hurried faces, automatic gestures, tired gazes. People trapped in the same quest that imprisoned him, feel enough will to change. And he realized how everyone, including himself, lived waiting for a day that never. Later, he found Ben sitting on a bench near the square, with an open notebook, a tranquil look on his face. He seemed oblivious to the chaos around. Ethan approached, still confused by his feelings, and asked almost without thinking, "How do you manage to maintain this focus every day? Don't you get tired? Don't you get discouraged?" Ben smiled with a calmness that was unsettling. "I don't depend on willpower. I follow a path." The words seemed simple, but they fell like a stone into the silent lake. "But what if you wake up without energy, without hope, reason?" Ben closed the notebook, looked at him, and replied, "That's why the reason later. The movement comes first." For a moment, Ethan felt anger. How could someone speak of discipline so lightly? But at the same time, there was something true in that serenity. Ben didn't seem to be fighting again, seemed to be walking with it. Before Ethan could say anything, Ben stood up and said simply, "Tomorrow, before sunrise, go to the river. Someone who needs to show you what I've learned." That night, Ethan barely slept. The sounds of the city faded from his mind, replaced by the same whisper he had heard before. Samurai's voice. Saw flashes, the glint of the water, a figure with its back turned, slow swing of a sword. He didn't know what awaited him at the river, but he sensed that something there would transform him forever. And as the first trace of light appeared on the horizon, he felt his heart clench, as if the samurai himself were guiding him through the darkness. The sun had not yet risen when Ethan arrived at the river. The cold air cut his skin, and the silence seemed more alive than sound itself. There, amidst the mist and the pale reflection of the moon, stood an old fisherman. His movements were slow, precise, almost ceremonial. With each cast of the net, the old man breathed deeply, as if each gesture had an invisible purpose. Ethan watched in silence, intrigued. The scene seemed timeless, as if the world had stopped to watch. When the fisherman finally turned his face, Ethan felt a shiver. Something in that man's gaze, the same piercing serenity of a samurai. "You came early," said the old man, without taking his eyes off the water. "Discipline begins before the sun, because the world is still asleep. And silence reveals who you are." Ethan didn't answer. He didn't know whether to speak or just listen. The fisherman continued, "Everyone thinks strength lies in doing a lot, but true power lies in do the same ... even when my heart is weary." The sound of the river seemed to agree. Ethan approached, curious. "Don't you get tired of repeating the same gesture every day?" The old man smiled. "I do get tired, but tiredness doesn't control me. I come because I must, not because I want to. That difference changes everything." Ethan remained silent. Something within him broke, the idea that one only acts when there is motivation, that desire is the driving force behind action. Then the old man asked, "Do you think you are free when you follow your feelings? Or are you a prisoner of feelings that change every day?" The question struck Ethan like an invisible blow. he was speechless. For a moment he realized that his entire life had been guided by waves, not by direction. The fisherman pulled in his empty net and gazed at the still dark horizon. I didn't catch anything today, exactly, but I'll still be here tomorrow. Ethan looked at the old man's hands, firm, calloused, but full of peace, and he understood something the samurai had already tried to show him. Discipline doesn't guarantee results, it guarantees presence. The sun began to rise, illuminating the river with golden hue. Ethan realized that, for the first time, the silence didn't frighten him, it shaped him. And in the reflection of the water for a brief moment, he swore he saw the shadow of a sword. The old fisherman remained silent for a while, observing the river as if reading an invisible book. Then he pointed to the bank, where a tall bamboo swayed gently in the wind. "Look at that tree, boy. Do you know how long it took to grow like that?" Ethan replied hesitantly. "A few months." The old man smiled with a slight nod. 5 years, Ethan. 4 of them, nothing happened. No sign of life. The farmer who planted it was called a fool. People laughed, said he was wasting his time, but he persevered. Every day he watered the soil and cared for the seed, even without seeing results. And then, in the 5th year, in just 6 weeks, reached the sky. Ethan frowned, intrigued. "But what happened before that?" The old man replied. "During those invisible years, the bamboo grew roots deep enough to support everything that was the unseen force, the silent part of growth." Ethan looked at the bamboo again and felt a lump in his throat. This wasn't just a story about a plant. It was about him, about everyone who gives up too soon. How many times had he stopped just when he was beginning to put down his own? How many dreams had died because of patience? The wind blew strongly, and the bamboo bent without. The old man then said, "See how it bends without breaking. That is discipline. It is not rigidity. It is flexibility with purpose." For a moment, Ethan thought about everything he had tried to do too quickly. The abandoned books, the forgotten goals, the plans left unfinished. And he understood that perhaps failure had never been a lack of talent, but of time that he hadn't known how to honor. The fisherman cast his net again and said, "The world values what grows, but everything that grows too fast also falls fast." Bamboo teaches that slowness is part of strength. Ethan stood motionless, contemplating the reflection of the light on the water. He seemed to see his own roots growing there, invisible, firm, silent. And for a brief instant he didn't hear, but he felt the presence of the samurai behind him, silently, a look that said, "Now you understand. What doesn't hurry remains." The next morning, Ethan woke before sunrise. There was no alarm, no promise, no excitement, just a firm silence guiding him. He remembered the fisherman's words and the samurai's gaze and decided to act. He picked up his books, set his desk, and began to study. At first, each minute felt like a battle. His body begged for rest, his mind invented excuses, but he continued. It was no longer about wanting to, it was about persevering. With each repetition, a small resistance broke within him. Time passed more slowly, but for the first time, he felt present in every second. In the following days came fatigue, distractions, doubt. There were mornings when the weight of routine seemed unbearable. He saw others giving up, saying it was useless to persist. But the more the world screamed for surrender, the more he heard the voice of the samurai. The warrior does not fight against others. He fights against his own limits. Ethan began to understand that true strength was not shown in visible success, but in the ability to continue when everything seemed meaningless. One afternoon, exhausted, he thought of stopping. The light of the late afternoon streamed through the window, and for a moment, he felt the old despondency returning. He laid his head on the table and closed his eyes. In the darkness, he saw the river again. But this time the fisherman wasn't there. The samurai was waiting for him. His gaze held no judgment. Calm. You want to conquer the world before you conquer yourself? The question struck like a blow to the chest. Ethan felt anger, then shame, then a strange kind of clarity. He understood that discipline wasn't punishment, but a gateway. That constant effort didn't diminish him. It liberated him. When he opened his eyes, something inside him had changed. The same routine that had once felt like a burden. Repetition ceased to be boredom and training. Each simple act, waking up, studying, practicing, became an invisible sword being sharpened. People began to notice. Ethan is different, they said. No one understood what was happening inside. He didn't want recognition. He wanted consistency. And deep down he knew the samurai was still there, watching. And the final test was yet to come. Years passed and Ethan was no longer the same. The restless and impatient boy had become a man with a calm gaze, and his life, once made of impulses and giving up, now followed the silent rhythm of discipline. He didn't talk about success. He simply lived what he had. Every morning he repeated his habits without haste, with the serenity of someone who understands that time is not an enemy, but an ally. And it was then that he looked around and noticed something that deeply moved him. People began to change simply by observing him. The silent example of his constancy inspired more than 1,000 speeches. It was as if the spirit of the samurai, the one that had once awakened him, now inhabited him completely. One night he returned to the river. the same place where it had all begun. The old fisherman was no longer there, but Ethan could feel his presence in the sound of the water and the light wind that stirred the leaves. He sat on the bank and watched the moon's reflection. There he understood that discipline is not just a practice, but a way of being. It is mastery over the present moment, the decision to act when no one is watching, the courage to persevere even when there are no guarantees. He smiled, because now he understood samurai was never an eternal master. It was always the inner voice that awakens when the noise of the world falls silent. Ethan knew there was no secret formula. There was only one path. Do what needs to be done, every day, even if it seems small, even if no one applauds. Walk for 5 minutes, wake up on time, keep the promise made to yourself. Small acts, repeated with presence, build destinies. The mind seeks immediate results, but the soul seeks coherence. That is what discipline delivers. You've made it this far, remember, the samurai within you is still waiting to be awakened. Don't wait to feel like it. Start now. Do something, even something simple, but do it with purpose. Time will reward every silent step you take. If this story touched you, like this video, write in the comments what this journey awakened in you. It can be a word, a symbol, or even your silence. Want to continue this journey with me? Subscribe to the channel. The journey doesn't end here, it only begins.